Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 3 of Sit and Drink. I'm here with my father, Peter Villalta. How you doing, Dad?
Good, buddy. Good. Morning, everyone.
So, typically when we do the introduction for these podcasts, I introduce like how we met to the viewership, so they kind of get an understanding of our relationship and stuff like that. It's a little bit more difficult to do it this way, because you're there at the very beginning, so kind of difficult like that. But today, because you're probably going to be on the podcast more than once, we can talk about a couple of different things. We can either go a work-related route, or we can do an Italian heritage kind of family-oriented route. What are you feeling like today?
I prefer to go to Italian heritage route.
Then we can talk about that.
Sounds good.
If you might notice, if you are a video viewer on YouTube, we are in a different set, and if you're a podcast viewer, you might be able to hear a little bit of a water drip. I apologize about that. We are outside in Florida, in this behind this beautiful tiki bar, which I thought was the perfect set when I saw it. So I needed to record the episode here.
Very nice.
But yeah, we're here. We're in Florida. But Dad, tell me a little bit about early childhood. You're coming from an Italian family, first generation. What's that like growing up?
Well, growing up in an Italian home, like any other ethnic home, first immigration is always tough, right? First children immigrants. A lot of pressure, a lot of stress put on. The fact that, you got people who come from foreign countries, like Nona came from a post-war country, right, from Italy, and it was just after the war. So they had a lot of, difficulties and situations they had to adjust to, right? So obviously coming to a Canadian land was totally different than what they were used to. They also came to a country that was their enemy when they were at war, right? So
It's definitely a culture shock for sure.
it's a cultural shock, and acceptance wasn't, it's obviously I'm glad that we've progressed as a society and a civilization, because in those days they weren't well received, right? And obviously, and understandably, they just, I'm sure they were engaged in a massive world war. They were on the opposite side.
And in Europe, it's such a you're the enemy type of thing. You are you are them.
Sure.
Even if you look at Italy, like regional based people,
Absolutely.
they disagree with each other so much. But then when you come to Canada, of course there's going to be a little bit of almost breathing room you need and stuff like that. So when Nono came over, he came over for the rail yard to help work on the rail yard.
That's your Bisnono. So your
Bisnono.
great-grandfather came over. He came over in the first wave of immigrants from I think it was about 1909, 1910 to about 1914, just before the break of the First World War.
Okay.
So your great-grandfather came, and he worked on railroad, right? Typical immigrant worker, and possessed a skilled trade. So like a lot of the Asian Canadians, Italian Canadians, I'm sure speak for many nationalities. They came and worked on railroads, right? So they worked on the railroads, and hardworking people. And he did that for 3-4 years, and he sent all the money back home. But then the war broke out, and obviously his patriotism back to his
He had
native.
to come back.
Yeah, he went back to Italy, and he had three children to take care of, and a wife. So that's what he did.
So then when Nono went over, he just went over he already had the skill of bricklayering?
Yes, he did. Your grandfather, after the war, obviously, devastation in our region of Italy, and then obviously the economic profile of the country is very poor, very destitute. It was in ruins. So he, like many others, in 1950, decided they were going to immigrate, right? Because they wanted some opportunity. There wasn't much left back home for them. So he was going to choose to go to Argentina.
Wow.
So those are the biggest waves, the biggest recruiters, if you want to, for lack of better words, with Argentina, Canada, and Australia. I wasn't comfortable with Australia because
didn't like bugs.
It's too far for him. But your great grandfather So he had signed his papers for Argentina because, like many other German Italians, were going to Argentina. A huge wave of Italian population in Argentina. So just prior, I think it was a week before, your great-grandfather told him that's a big mistake. Do not go to Argentina. Go to Canada. There's more promise.
Which was really the right choice.
Yes,
because
it was. Yeah. So, and that's what he chose. So, destiny has as it is, and if you believe in that, it was what it was. So he came. He changed his papers last minute per se.
Wow.
Nowadays, you probably
couldn't even do that.
No.
It would I think it would take months, like
Yeah.
at least up to 6 months probably to get that.
Yeah, he went down to the office. They said, "You want to go there?" And they just kind of erased that, and he stamped Canada on his passport.
Okay, they probably wanted less people because they wanted less mouths to feed in Italy, so they probably were just like, you know what, go.
Well, it was tough, right? Like obviously, they had lost the war, so there's retributions and a lot of retributions that we paid back. So
Was it similar to how Germany had to pay back certain
absolutely,
things?
absolutely. And plus, so there wasn't the investment. There wasn't there's a sorting out of between bipartisanisms. You had a fascist partisan group
Right.
in Italy. It was a very divided country in itself. So it was not like a one or two. There was so many factions. A lot more guerrilla fighting in the north, where your grandfather came from, right? So, but nonetheless, so he chose to come over. He got married first. Obviously, he married your Nona. Obviously,
Married Nona, and
then he took. I think they got married like on a Sunday, and his ship left on a Tuesday, right? And,
wow, that's
yeah.
I didn't know that was it was that close.
Yeah, yeah. And then he came for a year.
He came. He was in Canada for a
Yeah.
whole year. So Nona and Nono got married, and then
then he
2
left.
days later he left, and they hadn't seen each other
Yes.
for a whole year.
For a whole year, yeah.
And there wasn't exactly FaceTime or Skype back then. So, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah. So
this-
take that for what it was. So
Yeah.
you talk about like a long distance relationship. Now they've known each other
beforehand.
and per standards of that time, your grandparents probably were considered to get old. They're married old.
Right.
Because Nona was close to 25, 26.
That
and
is-
Nona,
wow.
And Nona was 27, 28, right? So they were a little considered old.
Yeah, because
quote,
typically you
unquote.
would only get
Absolutely.
married by 18.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Like it was a must.
So when it came, Nono had family here, extended family, I should say. So you needed a sponsorship to come into Canada.
Okay.
So you had to be sponsored, and in order to be sponsored, you also made life easier if you had some sort of skill or a ticket of some kind, right? Like
Okay.
any of the trades, because that's what they were welcoming in Canada, and they were in need, dire needs of it, like we probably are now, reverse roles. But
Yeah.
what's happened is he came. He was a bricklayer, stonemason, and so he came and he spent time with family, typical immigrant story.
Made some
Borders.
money.
Yeah, he was a boarder. He's a boarder at someone's house, and he paid his rent, and then his two brothers showed up. My uncle showed up, and then they
Did Bees Nono end up ever coming back, or did he only?
never, no, he never came back. No, he stayed.
He stayed in Italy?
and unfortunately, he passed during the war too, like the
Oh,
Second
okay.
World War. So it became even tougher, right? So it's
Right.
even tougher. So the boys were all here.
Right.
So all three boys immigrated to Canada. One of my uncles stayed only about a year, and my uncle Dino decided he did not like this at all. He hated Canada.
Just did not like
No,
the.
he went back to France because that's where he
Yeah.
has escaped after the war because he is part of the French resistance. And then my other uncle stayed a couple more years, Paulo's dad
Yep.
and mom. But they moved around. He didn't like it either, so he too chose to go back to Italy.
Culture shock for a lot of people.
Yes, it was.
And I'm sure they weren't treated 100%. Like,
No, of course not. Like I say, part of the earlier conversation, post-war, post-cultures.
Yeah.
It takes. You could imagine.
It takes time.
It'd be hard if your son or daughter had been, in a war, died on a foreign land,
And then suddenly,
and you now those are your neighbors. It's I
it
understand
was a tough
it,
transition period for everybody.
for sure.
Well, when you have a war like that, when it was basically, as much as people said World War I was the war to end all wars, World War II really
Yeah,
was.
Yeah. And it was more of a great divide as well, right? It was a bigger divide, and obviously it engaged more parties. The
Mm-hmm.
Second World War, so it touched a lot more lives, right? So
So then Nona comes over.
yeah, Nona comes over a
and
year later.
A year later, wow, which is crazy to me. I still didn't realize that there was only the two-day layover, and then after getting married and then going over, that's almost unheard of nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
And so she comes over, they start having kids.
Yep. Well, a year or so into it, a couple years, I should say, because at the end of the day, they realized they needed a home. They were living, they were living and they were renting and stuff, but they eventually found a home, and they fixed it up.
Yep.
And they fixed it up, and it's a smaller home. It was our original home, but
But it was home.
it was home.
Yep.
And then after that, along came your Aunt Marilyn, then Zia Loris,
Yep.
and then Zia Diane, myself, and Zia
eventually
Lisa.
Zia Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of us were brought on. Most of us all lived at one point in time on our original home, so our original immigrant home.
Even Zia Lisa?
Yes, she did for the first 6 years of her life.
Wow.
And
That's
then
crazy.
then we kind of, so with that comes all the, it's a tight-knit family.
Yeah.
Again, to the point, Nona, your grandmother, had no family here, just one sister.
Mhm.
And she came from a family of 12, right? So
Which is crazy. you
so
know.
now you're just to yourself and one sister, and nowhere else in the country, and they're like blocks away from each other, if that. And your Nono, your grandfather, had nobody left here. So obviously, that makes for a different
makes you
dynamic,
yeah,
right?
makes
So
you have
for-
to be a lot more well knit to your immediate family
yeah.
for sure.
So, and that was exactly what we are, and I say that to this day. There's no one tighter than the five of us, because it just the way you were raised to take care of each other, look after each other. We didn't have the luxury of cousins or grandparents, and that was a bit of a it's
Definitely.
hard, but we made up that void by being together. Sometimes, to a detriment because
Yeah.
with your siblings, yeah.
Eventually, you're gonna lose your mind a little
Oh,
bit.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
no one's fault. It
But-
just happens.
But no one loves you more. No one takes care of you better. So, and it was good. So that's part of, like, they were great mentoring and part of that whole thing, and obviously great tribute to Nono and Nona. They instilled values and principles in all five of us that still hold true today. I believe that's a lot to do with their background, how they came,
Absolutely.
how they wanted us to progress through life, how they wanted us to move forward in life, right? So those are skills and traits they imposed on us, right? So
Old school values.
old school values, hard work all the time, nothing easy. Don't be lazy, always contribute and always be a valued part of society, adjust to society like they did, as much as they held their Italian roots. And typical immigrants, they probably held on to their Italian roots more than Italians did when we went back to Italy.
Yeah.
They exercised more of their roots than
Well, that was-
because their
what-
values were there. Right?
One of the most interesting things of going back to Italy is finding like no one really makes wine in their home anymore, or like while we still do, and
Yeah.
no one knows how to make capicolo or salami or
Yeah.
nothing anymore.
Yeah.
It's they've almost moved past that.
Absolutely. They also, in fairness to to my parents, they embraced the Canadian system. They really did. They knew they were guests of this country, but they embraced it in a way that made them Canadian Italians, right? So they never forgot that. They never forgot their rights as they voted. They were very good patriots. They still are. Known as still a very
Yep.
good. And so from that point of view, they respected the country that invited them in. They became part of that country. They became part of that culture, right? So it's important, but they never forgot that.
Known as 97, 98.
98.
98. So, still
Oh, yeah.
still pushing on, and
She voted, I believe, the last election. So that's amazing at 98
Yeah.
years old.
which is a lot of,
Yeah.
it's a testament to how younger people don't vote nowadays,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
don't exercise that right, and don't use that. You can tell it's like we came here, we want to use, we need
Absolutely.
to use our rights to do this, and you see like it's a very clear disconnect nowadays.
And they also understood what it was like to lose their rights.
Right.
To think of that, and don't look at how much they entitlement, but what they were taken away of. Obviously war allows that to happen.
Yeah.
And there's there's winners and losers in war,
Of
and
course.
I think everybody's losers, but there it depends what you consider. But so they lost a lot. They lost their freedom, their homeland. They were occupied by foreigners and so forth and so on, right? So, and obviously the war damages and the war mental damages that were taken to them, but they never forgot about their rights, and they enjoyed them because Canada allowed that, and like America, like it's North America allows that right and allowed them to practice their cultures and yet embrace the Canadian
and
one.
absolutely, and I mean it took time, because people don't like change, so it took time for people really to embrace new cultures and stuff like that, with the food and everything.
Absolutely.
But now you, like, especially where we're from, Windsor, you can find beautiful Italian restaurants basically everywhere.
Sure.
Like the Erie Street, the country has embraced the culture significantly, which is just like a little bit of a side note. I feel like it's happening a lot with the new Indian immigrants now.
Absolutely.
It's like it's taking some people some time, because it's like
Our
the
new
food, the spices are different, but eventually it's going to be a very similar thing. We're going to have these beautiful Indian restaurants and beautiful culture that we're going to embrace just the same way. It's just going to takes people time. Okay. So kind of got a very basis of like introduction into the Italian heritage, how Nono and Nona got here.
Yep.
But I kind of want to dive into early childhood. What was it like for you specifically growing up as a,
Well, we're an inner city family, right? So, like a lot of immigrants, the first homes were in the inner city before they got out to the suburbs, quote unquote. So, so you met a lot of diverse people, a lot of different cultures, which was amazing because that was really the introduction to a lot of different things. So, so
No, it's kind of like it's also like a great definition for Canada,
yes, for sure.
because you really got to see who everyone is.
Absolutely.
And appreciate every different culture.
Yes. And so with that comes great learning experiences, right? So like obviously like as an early childhood, like part of again what was instilled is work. So you hustled. A paper boy, the typical story, paper boy, lawn cutter, window washer, you
Yep.
name it, you did it, right? So, and back then, it was a lot easier. Kids were paid, and
Yeah.
you did your jobs and stuff. Sports-wise, you got introduced to non-Italian sports.
Right.
Like, obviously, Nono focused a lot on hockey.
Yeah, because
and-
it's well,
and
because
soccer,
hockey was
soccer. And soccer was very easy.
Yeah, he loved soccer, but hockey was definitely the easiest
Yes.
translation you could
Yes.
understand. It's like, okay, goalie, net,
Yes.
positions, goals, 1 goal, 2
Correct.
goal. Or you're trying to understand baseball. It's like trying to run around a circle, and you
No.
get points for running around the circle. And I like,
Yeah, because that was one of the odd things because baseball, hockey, soccer was basically culturally part of our
Right.
our makeup, right? Like football wasn't so common because inner city wasn't such a common thing. Like that was more. It wasn't very common around our area.
yeah,
Maybe-
and well, you needed more stuff to do
Yeah.
it, and
But-
it's definitely more of an American sport than a
Yeah.
Canadian sport for sure. But you still played.
Absolutely. So we signed up and did our things. And Nono never objected, but just as long as it didn't interfere with your
Work and school,
And
right?
work and school were imperative, right? So as long as it didn't interfere with that, and if it did, he had no hesitation pulling you off a baseball diamond or not making you go to hockey practice or soccer practice if it had to do something with a job or work, right?
But he was also very good about allowing
Oh,
you to
yeah.
participate, because he understood the idea of
Absolutely.
you needed to be a part of their Canadian culture
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, and sport was a big part of that, right? Sport made you understand things, made you learn a lot of things, right? Because, our parents didn't know what baseball was like, or fundraisers, or tag day for things like that, or
Yeah.
selling chocolate bars. For,
Yeah, the concept of
No,
them was probably
absolutely.
very almost absurd. It's like you got to raise money to go do these sports. Like, I thought we already paid. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? Like,
They were trusting, but you had to learn a lot on your own. So thank God
Right.
I had my older siblings that were mentors for that reason, right? Sign up for this or sign up for that. So
Yeah.
you always partake in something because, that was part of us. All of us had some sports influence. Nona was very big on sports. So was Nona, right? So
Yeah.
that was good. So
well, even
it's-
like the other day we went to we're big Toronto Maple Leafs fans. As a little side note, and we went to the Tampa Bay Toronto game, and Nona was like, we got to put the Toronto game on from home. Like,
Yeah.
she's like, they're there. Like,
Yeah.
we got to do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just.
Well, it's it. So that's part of growing up, right? So no, I wouldn't say was he wasn't an active dad per sports, right?
Yeah.
That was just a generational thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, and there are many that were, but he happened not to be that person, right? So, but he would come to a game, but he didn't understand a thing sometimes, especially when football and baseball. It was
It's
completely
hard. It was like.
it was a foreign language. It was truly was a foreign sport. As much as he tried to learn it and understand it, he had no concept of it. And obviously,
But even nowadays, to like, you sit someone down who's never played or done any sport. You go, okay, hockey, soccer. You score in the net, you get 1 point. After whoever has the most points by the end of the time wins. It's very easy to understand
very
that.
easy concept.
Football, it's like, okay, well, when you get it a touchdown, you get 6 points, and then you have to go for your extra point. But you could also go for 2 extra points if you really want to. And then after that, like, it's just you got your punt return, and your baseball, it's like you got all your different positions. You got to run around in a circle, like you're.
Yeah. So growing up was actually it, like I said, it was a lot of self-taught, self-induced, right? Because Nono wasn't the Mike Brady type dad like you saw in the Brady Bunch. He wasn't out there signing you up for things and doing things, right? You have to do a lot yourself. And so, that's why you did things and, hand-me-downs and picked up things.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You picked up the game as you learn and you played, with the neighborhood kids. And, obviously there's, French-Canadian parents. There was all kinds of, the English parents. And they would coach you or teach you or even talk to mom and dad, and they would explain to them what we were doing, and as long as it was all trustworthy, above board. I think of it back then how very trusting and liberal we were compared to nowadays with all the police clearances and so forth and all that.
To becoming a coach or to do
and all the
anything.
things they were so entrusting to other people, right? But it was fun. It was no,
You had to be. There's no systems in
No.
place like that. Like, recreational sports was really just becoming a really commonplace thing in your generation. I find like beforehand we were building the building blocks for sports, and now it became recreational for students, for anybody to really get into and do.
Yeah, and like anything else, sometimes you have to walk to hockey practice because it was an outdoor skating rink. There was no, so Nono wasn't driving, or some parents would drive you, but we'd walk a couple blocks. There was outdoor rinks. That's when traditionally hockey was done in those days, but, baseball, same thing. Got on your bike and you went and played baseball. You played at a diamond, and, that's the way it was. So that was that part of that. Growing up, the sports part was always fun. Culturally was always good, too. Like you got the, and understanding how other people did things.
Well, because that was probably such a prime spot for a mixing pot, but at the same time, when you're on a team, you forget about all the other stuff. You forget about the cultures. You forget about everything like that. So it was probably such a great way to really join the community properly.
Absolutely.
Too.
Black, white, yellow, brown, green. It didn't matter who you were. You guys all wore the same jerseys or the same uniform, and everybody's treated the same. And there was no, that's kind of what was nice about that. That broke down all those barriers, and it didn't allow you to be who you were. You weren't the Italian kid anymore. You were just either the shortstop, the defenseman,
number 6,
or number 6, the winger. That's
right.
all you were, or the fullback in soccer. That's all you were. It didn't matter, what color, creed, skin color,
it didn't
denomination.
matter at the
didn't
time.
matter. And that's what made it beautiful. And I always said that about growing up in the inner city. It was a very, multifaceted and a big mixing pot, which was great, right? But so along with that, like everything else, growing up in those childhood was always inner cities, a different type childhood than a suburbia type childhood, right? So
for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes you could run with some bad crowds.
Well, I'm sure talking to Mom when we're doing a podcast with her too, will be very different because she grew up in the county and sort of things like that. Culturally, you experience. It's not like, yes, it might be for a lot of people it could be a bigotry thing, but a lot of times it's just they never experience those types of people.
Correct, yeah.
Right, and that's it.
Our childhoods are day and night, like it's polar opposites. Like, plus, you grew up in a very, obviously inner city's a little tougher sometimes. Sometimes there's a lot more challenges inner city, right? So, all kinds of stuff. You're living within,
Well, I'm sure there's
your lots are only 30 foot wide, so your
Yeah.
houses were on top of each other, your backyards, and you learned a lot how to deal with things. It could be physicality. He had an issue, you fought it out. If there was a problem, you dealt with it. Culturally, you dealt with it, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there was so much going on as a kid when you did that, right? But I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't. It did us well, But and then eventually, as I got to grade 9 and 10, we moved out to the suburbs. We decided, we built a house in the suburbs, and then things changed.
Everyone worked their asses off and made
Yes,
some money.
absolutely.
And
then, but nonetheless, and then you still, that was a whole cultural. That was a cultural upsetting as well, because now you're out with a bunch of like very privileged,
Yeah, now
what
you're
I
with-
consider privileged.
Yeah.
And it was a culture
Culture shock in itself, for
absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely, another upside, what was kind of, you were really kind of rough compared to what they were. And then you soon learned, wow, they know more. They were traveled. They did a lot of things that you weren't exposed to, right?
Yeah.
So,
So
your
you
childhood
got to
kinda-
learn from them as
Yes,
well.
Absolutely, 100%. They were great teachers, because in their own way, then you learned there was a lot more, family dwellings, a lot more family settings, a lot of things that kind of instilled in you and saying, hey, this ain't a bad way either. They had pools, they had vacations, and they did things together.
It's like, okay, this is this is okay too. Like,
Very good. Yeah, it was.
so the idea of Sit and Drink is to tell untold stories that would typically never be told over something to drink. So you got any suburbia stories or growing up in Highland stories? Like,
Wow, Highland was a more formidable part of my years. So I think there was things like there was one story. Traditionally, we always went to this Italian barber.
Okay.
And again,
I love this story. I've heard this story before.
as per anything else, you had to go to an Italian barber, and it was already predetermined how your hair was going to look. So it was
Buzz
you
cut.
had no say in anything, right? It was just understood.
Yep.
So one day
No mullets.
no mullet, no, I hadn't heard of. But I challenged. I thought I was going to challenge the system that day, because I thought it was, I thought I was smarter than the average guy.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, I think about 10, 11.
Yeah,
right?
that's about when you start wanting to challenge the
Yeah,
system
so I said,
a little bit.
I'm not going to put up with this. I think this guy's pretty, I'm going to call Nono's bluff, because, my dad already had preset this. So I went in there, and his name was Leonardo. Tough guy, tough Italian old dude. And, typical barber shop. Not much different than today. 4 or 5 chairs in there.
They're comparable to like Pete's or something.
Yeah, sitting down, 4 or 5 guest chairs, 2 barber chairs. And, traditional, I think the average demographics, probably anywhere over 50. Again, predominantly Italian, predominantly,
For sure.
old school. And so I challenged it. So I went in there and said, listen, Leonardo, I'm going to change my hairstyle today. So he said, oh, really? That's what you want to do? Is that what
Your old man say that's okay?
Yeah, he says, that's what your father wants? I said, absolutely. Him and my mom agreed on this. And they want it longer. This.
Slick it back for
slick
me.
it back
Give me
and
the
make
style.
it look really young.
Yeah.
So 4 other men, I just remember sitting in the chairs, waiting for their turn, put down their paper, and they're reading all Italian newspapers and sports magazines.
And they all know each other. They all knew
each other.
no.
They all knew my dad. And Leonardo puts down, you got to picture this now. Let me set this up. Like, you're in an Italian chair with the red, white, and the
Yep.
colors are the Italian flag. The Pope's hanging on the wall. President, John F. Kennedy picture and all the other
Yep.
stuff, and picture this. And he's in the traditional white garb with the scissors. And anyway, he puts down all his utensils, looks at me, puts the gown on, like he's getting prepped, like complete,
Yep, he's
yeah.
selling it for sure.
Oh, he's selling it. Turns around, he says, turns the chair, makes me face the guys. He says, we're going to change your style today. And I said, oh, I was so happy that this is going to work.
This is great.
And then
I fooled the
comes up,
system.
and out of nowhere, he does a slap to my face, come one side, came from right to left, both sides. But bang. And left a mark on he just unhurled this slap. He says, and spoke Italian. He says, don't you ever.
Italian strong hands too.
Don't you ever lie to us again that this is what your father wanted. I was still stunned. And I looked, didn't want to shed a tear, because that was not the macho thing to do. And they wanted to see how tough you really were. So he came across with another one, just as a warning. And then he gave me another one coming back. He says, that's from your parents. because they would want me
They would want me to hate you.
to instill this so you wouldn't lie again. And I just remember I was completely humiliated,
Yeah.
sat there, got the haircut. What haircut? It was just a buzz cut.
Yeah, I gave you the buzz cut.
Paid him the money.
Yeah.
I was shaking. I was just kind of like that. And
Got
you know,
embarrassed.
the old guys in the chair said, hit him again. You know, you should hit him on the way out. Like these guys just were.
And then they're like,
I remember coming home and my brother saw me first, and Zeal said to me, What happened to you? He says, red marks on the face,
Yeah.
like, you know, handprints, like these guys.
I just went to the barber.
Went
Like,
to
you
the
just went to the barber. What
He
happened
said,
to you?
What'd you do? I said, I told him I wanted to change the style. No, didn't like it anymore. And he says, Are you nuts?
What
He
are you
says.
doing? Like-
Dumbass, he says. No, already pre-sets him up with that, he says.
And Zio probably could have told you that because he probably tried to pull the same thing when he was younger
Absolutely.
too.
I'm sure he did, but it was kind of lesson learned. Like, you know, you want to be a smart ass, you pay for
Did
it.
he ever tell No?
Yo, Leonardo, the
Yeah,
barber? Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, he
Yeah.
did? So the
Because
No hit
the
you
three-
again?
He confronted me because the three guys that were there,
Yeah.
or the other three gentlemen, four, they all knew each other. A small community,
Mm.
right? And said, hey, your son tried to lie, and you know,
Yeah, he's trying to pull a fast one.
But in those days, No was the ultimate believer. Like many, like took a village to raise a child, right? So he had no
problems
no.
with-
It wasn't like he was in, you know. He had no problem with
Yeah.
if I done wrong and someone had tried to correct me or teach me some valuable lessons.
That's fine.
So it was one of those. Yeah, that was
Well,
definitely.
especially one of those. Or it's
That
just-
was stunning. I never tried that again. You know, I did. I shouldn't say that. I did.
Yeah, you
try
try to
another.
go to. You try to go
So
to
when
a
I got a
different
little
barber.
older, I got smarter again. So here I got, smart the system again, and
It's like, okay,
I went
I'll
to
just
this.
go to a different location
I
this
just went to a
time.
different location and went to a Canadian barber. And I said, "You guys cut hair? Absolutely. We'll wash it too and do all this stuff." I said, "Wow." But I remember, you know, a haircut at the time was $3. You know, so. This guy had, you know, I did the whole thing, I washed my
9
hair, the
yards,
whole
like-
9 yards, and he trimmed it, he styled it. He said it'd be $8. $8, like it was
Like, yeah,
unheard of.
I only got three.
Free. So I said, just a minute, and his cash was right next to the door. And dashed out the door.
Didn't you throw the money at him too?
Yeah, I threw it because I had to run.
Yeah,
Yes.
here's your $3.
And
Here's
he chased me, but you know I knew the neighborhood better than him, and turned out it was a chain. Now that was his first stop.
That was
but
his first stop?
Yeah, and then he became a chain later
Wow.
on. I felt like saying, "Boy," I felt like going up to him and saying, "Hey,"
Hey, do you remember me? I was the kid who threw change at you and had to sprint
and
out.
sprint out. You know,
It's
unfortunately, my paper route drop off was right in front of the place, so
God.
I always had to play coy. I think, you know, I thought I was smarter than him. I think he always knew who it was. He just
Yeah.
let me go, right? So,
Well, eventually you gotta realize he's just a kid, and he probably wanted his paper too. So
yeah,
he's not gonna say too much.
It was just kind of childhood stories that were kind of embedded in you, right? But then eventually, like I said, we moved on and we moved out and we moved into suburbia, and then, you know, things by that time you're starting to mature, right? So
Yeah,
you know,
you-
and then now the career choices or life choices come into play, right? So met some very good people, had some very good friends growing up, high school friends, and they were all newer friends because, you know,
So, like if we're setting up like a timeline, would you say like grade school was mostly spent in Highland, and in high school you were more
yes,
in the
yes,
suburbia?
Yeah. I would say from grade 10 on, right? 10
Okay.
Grade 10 to grade 13 was you know, that was all.
Were they picky about school districts back then, or did you just stay at Kennedy
No,
the whole
we
time?
stayed at Kennedy, but where we moved to, ironically, was the
Was
same
still in
district,
the
the Kennedy
district?
district. Yeah, so that was
for,
kind of.
for public, probably, right?
Yes,
Or-
for sure. Yeah, well, those days you didn't go to too many, you know, private. The separate
Catholic
school
system
boards.
wasn't-
The
wasn't-
parochial school board was.
Was still young?
Yeah, and it was only like you paid tuition. Like Assumption and Brennan was
Oh,
notorious.
was
paid.
still you had to pay?
You had to pay, right? So
Okay.
before they legislated the bill that allowed all funding,
Publicly funding for
equal
Catholics.
funding for both sides, right? But it was still good. So we went to a public high school, believe it
Yeah.
or not. So and met some very good people and had some great years, some great memories.
And the school that Holy Names was it not open yet?
No, it was called Centennial.
Yeah, Centennial. Was Centennial open yet?
Yeah, Centennial was open. Yeah.
So why wouldn't you go to wouldn't Centennial, or was
It
that
was out of our district.
that was so
Yeah.
so Kennedy was more in your district
Yeah.
than
Yes, for sure.
Centennial,
Yep.
which is weird
Yes, for sure.
considering
Yeah.
that Kennedy to me seems so much farther from
Farther,
Nona's
yeah.
house than
Yeah.
Holy Names
But
is
they had,
now.
they had bus routes and stuff like that
Yeah.
if you had to, right? But that was, you know.
Well, and you moved. They probably wouldn't have made you. They probably wouldn't have been
No,
too stickler about
No,
it too. All right. So we had to take a little bit of a detour because, well, we had some camera overheating again, and Basically, it's been a couple days since the last part of the episode, but where we left off was the barbershop story,
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
where basically the barber kind of slapped the crap out of you, and
Taught me not to lie.
yeah, very very clear lesson right there, I
Oh,
guess.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so that was that's like more of a grade school type story, younger life. I kind of want to explore more high school and then like probably early adult life. And then I think we can call it a day, and then we'll have you back on for a more career oriented episode for sure.
As you wish. Yeah, so like I say, like we left off last time, we were moving away from the urban type home.
Yep.
And we had just moved out to, our
More
present,
suburbia.
yeah, more suburbia, present family home. And that was a total culture shock, to say the least. Obviously, like when you're inner city families, there's a lot of, diversity we spoke about earlier, broken homes, all kinds of crazy things. And there's a lot of characters, good people, but they would what we would consider characters of life, right? So they truly do add, they build your persona. So when you get out to suburbia, everybody's just kind of like straight white towel. Like
Yeah, you're kind of.
there's no color in their towels. Like for analogy, like the towels are all white. Like they're all the same. Like,
It's all like a very
doesn't
much
matter,
the same
yeah.
type.
Yeah, it's all the same type of person, same type of people. Everybody's worried about their lawn, their dogs, and their cars, and it's kind of a different vibe.
It's a different story.
So it's quite a bit of adjustment too,
Yeah.
right? So going into your high school years, it's culturally.
It was a culture shock almost.
And emotional too, right? You thought differently of yourself, right? Because you saw the way that these people, from grooming to taking care of themselves to how their everyday life was. Not that we were not, but just that it was something new.
It was
right?
almost it was a different level.
Yes, next level.
Yeah.
It was next level. So that was an adjustment. So, but going to a high school that they're all from the same neighborhood. So, and unfortunately, most of those fortunately for them, they all grew up together. Like they were all like from grade school to high school, very similar to what your life was. And I always envied that because I thought that was so nice. Because the grade school we went to was a hodgepodge. I think by the time we were in grade 8, about a third of them were already either in prison or they dropped out. So it wasn't the same.
Yeah, it wasn't the same
kind of vibe that you had. Like that's why I say I really felt like this. I felt like this square peg in a round hole sometimes out there. But you adjusted, and some very good people and good friends and good neighbors. And, the adjustment was fast and good. And they're very accepting, and
It
you
took
soon
time, but you got there.
Yeah, and you soon learn to, hey, as in Rome, do as the Romans do, right?
Right.
So that's the way South Windsor was. We'll have to kind of adjust, and change our ways and refine yourself. And, so it was good. So, we had some great times. The high school stories are always there. Like, we had a good bond, and, it became more of a, as your formal years are sometimes,
Is there a
crucial to you.
specific story from high school that you remember?
Boy, there's many. I think the very first thing in high school was, and I know people are going to find this going to somewhat disturbing,
Oh
if
God,
not.
here we go.
Yeah, but at the high school we went to, in grade 9 and 10, you had to swim naked, and it was the most. I think back now, I say I never understood like the idea of this,
Yeah.
right? So
The idea of,
mind you, it was an all boys class. It wasn't.
Oh,
it
I would
wasn't-
hope so. That would be a little.
Absolutely. It's
I think
so let's clarify that so we don't get in ourselves some.
I think some people would be a little.
Well, yeah.
Parents didn't call school very often, but I feel like they would do it for that one.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And it just goes to show you, and we're talking 45 years ago, whatever this, in real time it doesn't seem long. In today's time, it's quite long, right?
Yeah.
But just to show you how things were, and no one questioned it. That was the irony of it all.
The teacher,
Not
teachers
parents, not kids. You'd walk in a gym class, and
you take your pants off and you
and
go
he just
swimming.
said, "We're going swimming, boys." And I said, "Well, the natural question was, we didn't bring our swim trunks, and
Well, you don't need swim
You
trunks.
don't need swim trunks." They said, "You're going in your birthday suits," and that's the first time we heard that term.
Oh
It's
God.
all right. We're going in our birthday suits, and then away we went, right?
That is kind of a disturbing story.
Yeah, it's just kind of,
You know, you've told me it before, but like now that we're saying it on the podcast and other people get to hear it, you don't really realize how disturbing it really is.
If there's some, I'm sure if there's some people out there that we went to school together, the affirmations, they can confirm all this. This isn't something that was.
This isn't.
I don't know why. I do know why. I think part of it was like, they thought it was helping you advance yourself in your,
Confidence, maybe.
Your adolescence, your confidence.
Yeah.
That part of like, nothing to be ashamed of. Everybody's made the same. Everybody's got the same parts, so forth, so on. And
definitely would not fly in today's day of age.
Would be, I think,
I mean, my high school didn't even have a pool, so thank God.
I think the school would be. Oh my God, I think.
I think that would be the biggest news story of the decade if a teacher was making.
I think they eventually, I know they did, but I don't know by the time we left school if that had been abolished yet. So by the time about early 80s, mid 80s, maybe, I think they abolished. Again, I think it was getting to the point. It was a very traditional old school.
Did Zia Lisa go to Kennedy as well?
Yes.
So probably by the time Zia Lisa went to Kennedy,
I believe so.
It was probably done for.
I think that was done for. I think there was a new generation of teachers and people coming in. But I do remember that was like another fascinating story. We used to have military training, and you had to do something called cadets in grade 9 and 10, and you could do it throughout all of high school,
which is now a separate program now, but at the time was just a high school thing.
And it was mandatory though. You had to do it in grade 9 and 10, but they actually gave you rifles, and we had a shooting range in a school.
Wait,
so as disturbing as that sounds,
especially in today's day and era,
with all the unfortunately with the
school shootings and stuff like that,
and how sad that is. It was something that we actually were
equipped
with.
You grew up basically around the Cold War era, right? They needed to.
Yeah. So they kind of it was part of that whole. There's a whole
just in case you got to know how to use a gun.
Absolutely.
Which I honestly don't think is a poor thing if they like a class or something, as long as there's like very extreme instruction and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
isn't exactly a bad thing. It's just
no, it was truly taking the gun apart, cleaning it, shooting it, and it was kind of and it was conducted by an ex-officer.
Yeah, someone who's very certified to be able to do it.
He was also a school teacher, so it's kind of like so I helped in the war effort, and but kind of crazy if you hear those stories now.
Yeah, you're kind of like, oh,
God, where did this happen? But they're all, you can fact check everything. It was very true, But it was just part of like the whole.
I think they still have I don't think it's open anymore, but I think they still do have the shooting range at Kennedy.
I believe so. It used to be downstairs in the boiler room, as they call it.
Yeah, I remember talking to somebody from Kennedy, who used to go to grade school with me. And they use it like it's like a historical site now, and they show people like the shooting range. It's not actively used anymore, but
I say I'm sure. Again,
Canada's it's a significant less problem. So, but
true.
You still it probably wouldn't exactly look good on the school board to.
No, it's kind of instilling just different things, right? But it was part of that whole,
if you want to do that, go into actual cadets now, and they'll teach you there.
Yes.
So that's kind of replaced that for sure.
Oh, for sure. That ship has sailed. That's a storied time, though, mind you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of dates you a little bit now. Looking back at it, makes you kind of laugh.
It's fun.
It was kind of one of those things, but at the time, it was normal, so it wasn't abnormal. Put it that way. Today, it sounds very absurd. I'm sure from a generational point, you guys must think, what kind of crap was this?
I can only imagine the next generational gap when I'm when I'm your age and I have and there's a kid in high school and seeing just a difference from them, like it probably won't be the same drastic as being nude in the pool, but I can only imagine what AI is going to be, how that's going to work in school and the different, and even just the way we teach nowadays.
I'm sure
it's going to be completely different.
Oh, you expect that. You're gonna expect that, right? And at the rate, the evolution of the AI and everything else that's taking place, it's so fast. It's moving
ridiculous.
at lightning speed, and I can imagine for a young person's or young people's, it's different. Myself, I just find it's exponentially so quick, and so fast. It's upon us so much that it's nearly hard to pivot that fast, for myself, But
when I was born. Well, I don't even know if internet was just becoming a thing when I was born, but for most of my early childhood, you had to call. You had to call
Absolutely.
and now you're at gigabyte download
Yes.
speeds. You're able to do so much, and that it's become probably one
Wow,
of the most important tool that humanity has now, and that was
I,
just 50 like in 20, 30 years. So I can only imagine the computer is now in your hand. Like
absolutely.
it's going to be ridiculous how tech, and no one can predict it. No
Yeah.
one can figure out how exactly it's going to go or how it's going to streamline. But
No, I think the sky's the limit, literally, and that kind of sciences and that kind of technology, right? So, everybody goes, but it's kind of like I can imagine what our forefathers thought at the turn of the century,
yeah,
is seeing
my
an
God.
automobile versus a horse. So it must be along the same lines.
Or like a sword to a musket,
Absolutely,
and then
absolutely, yeah, a good,
just
point.
going from World War One to World War Two, the
Yes.
technology, like it's
So
incredible.
so technology now it's actually dangerously.
It's dangerous
fast, yeah.
fast, especially since there's no regulation or
Yeah.
anything like that. You get a little
Agree.
bit worried, especially with the AI stuff.
For sure.
Personally, I'm a little I get a little spooked by that type of stuff.
Wow. It's like everything else. You have to embrace change. I know but it's a big embrace. Like
Yeah,
it's.
I'm impressed. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Oh yeah.
I'm worried about it in the hands of certain people, and it's
Yeah,
I mean, it's
'cause-
just like anything.
Yeah, because with good comes bad, right?
Yep.
So I mean, there's some bad people out there doing bad things, and they'll take advantage of it for sure.
Absolutely. So that's like high school. We're probably I'd say we're about 50 minutes. Like, let's see here. You got a timer? Yeah, we got 12. We're 12 minutes in right now. I think we were like 35 minutes in beforehand. So we probably got time for a good one or two more stories.
Well, then like
Is there anything from high school you want to keep talking about,
No,
or
I
you
think
want to
high
go to
school-
early adult?
early adult. Well, you are early adult in high school.
Yeah, I
per
guess.
se, but you're right. I know what you're saying, but. From that point on, like high school in those days, obviously there's the 13th grade, right?
Yeah.
Grade 13 was very.
So, and that is really when you're an early adult. Where
Yeah.
for me, you weren't really an early adult, and you kind of were in high school. You like to think you were, but it was more that first
exactly.
year, second year university that you kind of became an actual early adult, and even still now to this day.
Yep, absolutely. So those days. So once 13 and graduations come and go, and like life gets in the way per
Yeah.
se. So people who are on their career paths or some chosen path of some sort. And as you know, sometimes where you start's not where you finish. So
Yeah.
everybody did their thing, and but as things evolve, you try to always kept in touch. The core group or core friendship was there.
You try to make it work. You try to
You
keep
try to
everyone
make it
together,
work,
but
yeah.
it never.
Never does.
You keep a couple people. You lose. You gain a couple people
Sure.
as well.
Sure. So as time grew on and moved forward, between universities, trade schools, all kinds of things that were taking
Yeah.
place. We, some of our formative years, still chummed around together. Some people got married. Shockingly,
Yeah,
at the time, they got married fast. Some
That's
did,
probably like
some-
one of the most jarring things for me, at least like growing up, is when you see like people from high school like getting pregnant, getting
Yes.
married, and I'm like, I'm not there yet. Like, oh my God, guys, like what do you
True.
like? You're
True,
you're moving fast, but I guess for some people it just happens naturally, or it's a
Yeah.
culture thing. Like people move quicker than others sometimes, and it's just the way it happens.
You're right, or they're ready at
Yeah.
that given time, right? So, but things like that happen, So, missing all that and the camaraderie, we started pick up hockey. We do
Yep.
baseball, and we started our own baseball team and stuff like that. So, we kept ourselves, always in touch.
Yeah.
It's actually ironic, because sometimes it'll be a generational. Even all your friends.
Mm-hmm.
A lot have moved away, and
Yeah.
a lot have moved on or got married. So their lives got, obviously, things got
Things get in the way of friendship.
Yeah,
you try,
for
like
sure.
you try
And
to make
and
things work. You
obviously,
try to get together, but
understandably, family comes first, and people were establishing families. Friends were moving on. They were moving careers. They're out of town. So you mix up even with their second generation, like their brothers,
yeah.
and you kind of
Actually,
so we kind
that's-
of it's kind of funny.
It's
that
the same thing with like Mateo and Marcus,
Absolutely.
or even like Liam and Logan. Like
Yeah.
You're like after a certain point, the age gap doesn't matter
it
nearly
doesn't
as
matter,
much when
no.
you're
So,
after
like-
you get past 19, 20 years old.
So once your friends get into, they're older, and then, like I say, some had married, some had moved away. Their brothers were around, and we started with the baseball team, and then some couldn't make it, and then the younger brothers joined the team, and things like this. So
Yeah.
we had a very good camaraderie. So we did that for a long time. So.
And that's definitely like the thing we're doing this year is like trying to do more recreational sports and trying to get out more, because that's the best way to keep everyone together and to keep in decent, healthy shape
Absolutely,
too.
yeah.
But any good stories from like the Renegades that you're that it's safe to tell? Because I know there's some pretty ridiculous ones out there too.
We had, there were some there's some R-rated ones, and there's
Yeah.
some. It was fun though. It was a good group. They're beautiful people. They're great guys, and we had a lot of fun, like I say. But particular stories were always, we were. It was a good mix, right? Because we had a lot of younger people as
Right.
well on the team, and they're great guys. But we had some good laughs. I remember, everybody received nicknames,
Yeah.
like anything else.
Oh,
on the
yeah, for
team and
sure.
stuff. But I remember one particular time we were in the tournament, and it was in Niagara Falls. We were in some.
Okay. Oh God.
We're in the we're going for a provincial championship. I say we're not to discredit the guys on that team. They're a excellent, talented team. Too
Yeah.
much talent, right? I should have never been on that team, but they were a very talented team, right?
Right.
So, but we were in this tournament, long and short of it. So I remember we had this one guy, Henry, who snored so much. He snored so loud. It was just, you've never heard anything like it in your life. And I remember one night the boys, he was on a cot,
Oh God.
and they wheeled him outside on the patio, and they left him out there all night. But he was so sound sleeping.
He
and
was such a
snoring.
deep sleeper. He
Deep-
didn't wake
nah,
up.
Not
Wow.
a clue. Not a clue.
That's
Then there are some other stories, some tormenting stories. So your Zio Roger.
Oh yeah, you guys bullied Zio so bad.
Yeah, Zio Roger had one of those. He was one of the older guys on the team, and the younger kid just
Oh,
had
yeah.
had a blast with him. And Roger's a good-hearted. He's a good man, but
They did the saran
wrap
wrap on the toilet.
paper. Yeah, they put the deep heating rub, which is like a relaxant muscle rub.
Yeah, like the icy hot
icy hot on his
on his underwear and his
on his
crotch area.
Yeah.
Oh God.
God, yeah. So yeah, a couple stories there. So I'm sure Roger didn't appreciate it as much.
No,
But
not at the time.
At the time, it was comical, but after a while,
But I'm sure you look back at that, and those are the things you remember the
for sure.
most. You know,
For
like
sure. And there's hundreds of those kind of things. As with that built the camaraderie, that built the teamwork. That's probably what made it such a successful team, and good people and good friends.
well, when you don't have to worry about team drama, and you can just focus on the
Yeah.
game and just focus on the sport. It
Yes.
makes it makes it fun, and when you're having fun, you're usually going to play better when there's no stress.
And you also remember you're a mature person now,
Yeah,
right? By
you're
this
an
time-
adult now.
By this time, we're everybody's in their early 20s to late 20s.
Yeah.
And it's a different. We have careers started. Your life gets in the way, like I said earlier. So by this time,
You
work was,
you appreciate
Yeah,
being out there more.
for sure, and work was getting happen. So you're not sacrificing, for your career or stuff like
No.
that. You're not going to get hurt for that, right? So it's a different vibe, and everybody who plays is recreational things understands.
Was
what
there
we're coming
drinking
from.
while you played, or was that more
No.
for after?
It was more after.
Okay.
Always after.
Because you guys were in definitely more of a competitive league than what I'm playing
Yeah,
in
no,
this year.
there was nothing. No, it was never. Plus, it was very well organized league.
Right.
So the leagues all had good teams.
Is it still around?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm not really sure. I'd have to ask the guys. I've kind of lost all
Right.
contact, but it may be, or at least some sort of residual.
Some
of
sort
it.
of, because that would be
But
fun
was,
too.
It was great. It was really a good competitive.
Maybe it's like a unisex
It had
league.
umpires. It had everything.
Wow.
It was. Oh yeah. No. It was.
It was full
nothing.
professional.
Full professional. You had to turn in your score sheets, and you had
Yeah.
starting lineups. It was ground rules. It was.
So did you have
quite-
like a coach, or did like?
Well, I think because myself and Fabio and some of the founders, we actually founded the team, right? So
Right.
we kind of took the
you just
role.
took the
Yeah.
role, because we have a coach
Okay.
for our team. It's Lynn's mom, but like
Okay.
we have an actual coach who does our
No.
batting order and stuff like that.
We did it. The guys did it. You know,
Yeah.
it got
Well,
pretty routine.
it would have probably been tough to try to get some guy to just be a specific coach, because you guys traveled, and it would have been tougher for sure.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talent. It was pretty relevant, you know. So, and just sometimes that, you know, it's the way it worked out, right? So,
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. But very well organized. So not to discredit the guys, they were a good group of guys. We won a lot of medals. We won a lot of hardware, you know. So it was a lot of fun, great bonding times, and you know, like anything else, you saw the maturity and the growing up of people, right? So
especially some of those younger brother guys. You really got to see.
You went to a lot of weddings. And, you know, so it was a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie and stuff like that. Still to this day, I think a lot of them still are very tight. They grew up together, so they're very close still, right? So, but like, you know, like I say, it's always been it's fun. It's fun. I think people, they should have that part of their lives. Don't take it too serious.
Yeah, no, you can't. You got to be able to.
It was recreational, but the drinking.
But it's still competitive, and then I'm sure the drinking
afterwards for sure. Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that.
No, yeah.
That was a little bit too much afterwards.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you guys could really, you guys could probably outdrink any team on that field. You might be able to beat us, but we're gonna outdrink you at the bar later. I promise.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was pretty good, you know. So and you meet some very nice people throughout those travels and all those years of playing, and good, bad, and the ugly, obviously.
Yeah, I'm
right?
sure there's always going to be that one asshole who takes it too seriously.
Sure. There's quite a few that take it seriously, right? And you know, but that goes with the territory, right? The shooter McGavins, absolutely. Or
like the dodgeball.
For sure. But it was fun. It was fun. That was, like I said, that led us up to, and then you know, as for myself, I was probably one of the oldest members of the team, so you know, then. Obviously, things had to.
Eventually, life gets in the way. You have kids. You get married.
We had started a business and all this other stuff, so it was kind of not getting in my way, but it was becoming harder and harder for me to make that happen. So we ended up, you know, it just kind of dismantling, or I just walked away more.
Yeah, we're just like, because things happen. You get married. You're trying to start a family.
Other people picked up the gauntlet and took it, right, and they carried on for a few more years, and they played in different leagues and. The team got a little wider and broader, but the original group was
the original group stayed the same.
Yeah, for a while, and then they kind of took on new people, and people left, came and went. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think we got time for just one more shorter story. If you want to go into like actual adult life, if you like, that's not work related. If you got something, even if it could be me and Tally related, it can be mom related.
I think some of the nicest, the best memories have been with my family, my children, and my wife. I think one of the nicest, the fondest memories, the first time we went to see a hockey game.
Yeah.
And
Spitfires?
Very first time. And even before we went on to see the Leafs, but we went to see the Spitfires game. And then after that, just the love of the family for sport, baseball, hockey, football.
Well, to this day, I still work for the Spitfires, camera guy for them, right? Like, it's one of those things, like, you get into it and you love it, and
those are always fun memories. Those are beautiful memories.
And for people who don't know, sorry, Dad, the Spitfires, we've talked about it on another episode, but if it's the first time you're watching, sit and drink. The Spitfires are a minor league team for Windsor. They're basically a development team in the OHL, which is part of the CHL, which basically is, think of it as like the NCAA in Canada for developing hockey players to get into the NHL.
Correct. Yeah, very good way of putting it. Yeah. So also another fond memory is going to the football games.
Yep.
The U of M game, which is
U of M games, which you can't. That's the one thing America does right over anything. You cannot. I keep trying to tell the boys because they're like, yeah, we want to go to an NFL game. I'm like, yeah, guys, that's great. We can do that too. But you need to go to a college game. It's a different experience.
It's a rite of passage. It really is. And obviously,
especially when you're going to the big house and you're sitting with 100,000 people, and it's like you're like Ford Field's great, but it's 50,000. You're doubling that. It's an entire, like, you're sitting with a small city. Like,
exactly.
Right? It's insane.
It's a big community.
There's nothing like you feel like you're a part of something when you watch that team.
Yeah. And they're very welcoming, and the tailgating and the whole the whole experience of that. So it was nice this year because unfortunately we didn't have Mom with us because she had to work. But when the three of us, your sister, you and I, went, it was
and we
beautiful.
went to see the same team that it was the first game we ever saw together when I was, I think 10, 11, maybe something very young. Yep. And to be able, when we first watched the game when we were younger, that was like the barn burner, overtime, 50-point game. I was excited, but everyone else was like, we should be absolutely destroying these guys. We shouldn't. Like, I remember hearing on the radio, you listen to the ticket, and they're just completely shitting on Rich Rod. And like, this shouldn't even be a competition, guys. Like, what's going on? And then we go where we won the Big Ten this year. Like, we're a significantly better team this year, and yet it wasn't a 50-point game, but it was still like a nail biter, winning at the last possible second. Fantastic game where we should have honestly destroyed them, but it made it for an even better experience for sure.
It was a last-minute field goal, I think, was the final.
Yeah, Money Moody. Yeah, Money Moody kicked it in. He's gone this year, right?
Yeah, I think he got drafted yesterday.
Well, that's good for him because he's good. He's a good kicker.
Yeah, he's a money man.
But I think we're good.
Well, good. Thank you very much, son. I appreciate being on.
Thank you for coming on. This is great. We're going to have you on to go do definitely more of a career-oriented thing because I think it's impressive what you've done over there. But I just wanted to do more of a relationship establishing and stuff like that because you're going to be on the podcast multiple times. It's great. It's great having you. Love you too. Thank you.
Buddy.
Thanks for being on. And for people watching, we're on YouTube. If you're listening, we're on Spotify, Google, and then hopefully in the next week we're going to be approved for Apple Music Apple Music and Apple Podcasts and be on there too. But for now, thank you for watching or listening to Sit and Drink. I was here with Peter Villalta. I'm Eddie Villalta, and we will see you next time.